More than 152 years ago, back in 1868 to be exact, an argument between George Hall of New York and a Methodist preacher would turn into one of the most well known hoaxes of all time in the United States. This great hoax came to be known as the Cardiff Giant. I'm your host, Massxmordor, and this is Oddities, where I examine weird, strange, quirky, and morbid human history. George Hall, who's an atheist, was arguing over a scripture from the Bible. The scripture was Genesis 6:4 that states there were giants in the earth in those days. Hall decided to pull a fast one over the faith community and proceeded with a long, elaborate plan. First, he would purchase an acre of land along Gypsum Creek in Fort Dodge, Iowa, and hired local men to carve out a 12-foot long by 4-foot wide block of gypsum that was 2 feet thick. Gypsum is a raw material for manufacturing various construction products such as plasters and drywall, telling the men it's a monument for Abraham Lincoln. He had the block shipped to Chicago, where he hired a German stone cutter, Edward Burhart, to secretly carve it into the likeness of a man. Hall and Burghardt used stains and acids to weather the giant's skin and darning needles to create pores on his body. Hall then secretly shipped the carved block to Cardiff, New York, where it was put into a pit and buried on land owned by his cousin William Newall. Hall's total cost in setting his plan in motion was $2,600, which equates to over $42,000 in today's money. A year later, Newall hired some men to dig a well on that same spot. On October 16, 1869, the great discovery was made. Setting Hall's hoax into action with no time to waste, Newall quickly set up a tent over the giant and began charging 25 cents for people to see whether or not giants did roam the earth. Attracting the attention of scientists and archaeological scholars, it was quickly pronounced a fake and only carved stone. Some argued it was an ancient statue created by a Jesuit priest in the early 17th century. Meanwhile, Newell raised the price of admission to 50 cents. Hall knew that even more money could be made, so he sold his part interest in the giant for $23,000, or almost $500,000 in today's money, to a group led by David Hannum. Hannum would have the giant moved to nearby Syracuse, New York, for huge exhibition crowds. The famous showman P.T. Barnum offered $50,000 for the giant. However, he was denied. Barnum didn't want to be turned down, so he hired men to create a replica, then put it on display in New York City. Barnum claimed this was the real giant, and the Cardiff giant was a fake. In reference to those seeing Barnum's giant, Hannum was quoted in a newspaper as saying, "There's a sucker born every minute." Over the years, the quote has mistakenly been attributed to Barnum instead. Hannum sued P.T. Barnum for calling his giant a fake, but Hall admitted to his hoax on December 10th, and in February 1870, the court ruled that Barnum couldn't be sued for calling a giant a fake. But it wouldn't be the end for the Cardiff giant. It made appearances at the Pan American Exposition in 1901 and at the Hawkeye Fair and Exhibition in 1923. Since 1870, it has been referenced in pop culture many times, including the infamous Bunko Man, Soapy Smith from 1892, where he took a real body and passed it as a petrified man he called McGinty. Smith profited from the ruse for several years, charging 10 cents and swindling those waiting in line with shell games. He even profited by selling interest in the exhibition. The original Cardiff giant would end up in an Iowa man's basement as a coffee table until it was later sold to the Farmers Museum in Cooperstown, New York in 1947, where it is still displayed to this very day. Meanwhile, the P.T. Barnum one was claimed at a Farmington Hills, Michigan museum, while a third replica created in 1972 is on display at the Fort Museum and Frontier Village at Fort Dodge, Iowa, acknowledging the area where the original stone was cut and its origins. Alright, guys, this does it for the Cardiff Giant. Nothing is more American than believing in a good old fashioned hoax and, turning it into a quick profit. Well, during the 19th century, there were many scoundrels or opportunists that would go and do anything for a quick buck, basically. And with the rise in yellow journalism during the time, most likely helped spread the word and get it around. Okay, guys, so remember, if a man with a top hat and a long mustache comes up to you and says he'll show you something cool for 10 cents, run away immediately. Thank me later.